What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel. I've been putting out a lot of home wall content recently because I did a lot of home wall bouldering, and consequently I got the question a lot, many. How do you grade your wall? Training alone, no other inputs, is it legit? What's the deal? So I wanted to make an episode outlining my approach to home wall grading and grading in general, as this can be applied to any terrain really. I hope it's not only revealing but also useful to someone out there dealing with the issue, may it be home wall, gym or outdoor context. The question is, how can we orient ourselves? What do we have to look at and analyze regarding a boulder or a sport route for that matter to end up with an as accurate as possible grade? What I often see when people are new to the sport is, man, this edge is only 1 pad or half pad or whatever, so it's gotta be at least 7A or this or that grade, or wow, here you have to go dynamically and this contains even a dyno, so it's gotta be at least 7B or this or that grade. The problem is that there are 6Cs out there with quarter pad edges and dynos, just like there's 8As with only big holes and only static moves, and yet these grades can be accurate. On top of that, what's half pad for one person can be 1 pad for another. A dyno for one can be static for another. Thus, analyzing single problem characteristics like that will not yield an accurate grade. What should be analyzed, compared and graded instead is the physical challenge of the easiest possible method of climbing a problem as a whole, no matter how complex, tricky or technically demanding that method might be. In other words, no matter how obvious that physically easiest method is. I point this out because of course complexity and technique requirements often influence number of attempts alongside mere physical challenges, especially in less experienced climbers, but that often leads to problems graded harder than they should be. Obviousness of a problem influences on-site or flashing difficulty, thus offers more glory to gain out of a problem by accomplishing a flash or an on-site, but it shouldn't influence the grade, which should represent red point difficulty in my opinion. This applies as time goes on. If 10 years post first ascent some guy finds a physically easier solution for the same problem by using more modern technique, for example, the new easier solution should serve as a basis for an updated lower grade. If 10 years post first ascent holes broke or became greasy and the physically easiest solution got significantly harder, the now harder version should serve as a basis for an updated grade. Next question, who grades? In German we have a saying that goes, wer den Umlenker klippt hat recht, which would translate into something like, who clips the chains is right, meaning that climbers who properly red pointed a climb gain access to the grading discussion and everybody else has to shut up and listen, essentially, also the triers, also the I already did all the single movers. I feel that this has more relevance than ever in the age of social media, where we see much debate about whether this or that is really 9A or whatnot. Oh, look how many ascents in that little time, can't be a proper 9B, is it really 9C, blah 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 blah. Lots of people debate issues they have little clue about, and I get that that's interesting and fun and all, but of course it shouldn't shape opinions more than the voice of those who actually red pointed the climb, which is tough since they are often incredibly outnumbered. The fact that a big chunk of the climbing population never touches a big chunk of the grade ladder also impacts the perception of grading gradients, which I discussed in another video. One detail I'd like to add here is that opinions of climbers who are limit-wise way above the grade, as well as those of on-siters, must always be taken with a grain of salt. I could not accurately grade a sport climb in the 7A, I think that's 511C Yankee Doodle range at the moment. Being far below my limit, these grades become kinda blurry for me. I would rather listen to a person with a limit of 7B here, because they surely tried more routes in that range recently, and thus have a better comparison. On-siters often execute solutions harder than the easiest, as finding the perfect technique for a climb on the first go is very unlikely, and therefore they tend to give higher grades than necessary. Ultimately, beyond legend crafting and ego pushing, the purpose of even giving a very real climbing problem a very fictional grade is to give an unsuspecting climber who doesn't know anything else about the problem an idea of what to expect physically. In some grading systems, also mentally. Think about the E-scale, for example. Therefore, the most accurate grade has to be the mean of all grade proposals by all former red pointers of that problem. Following this practice, the chance that expectations through grading will be disappointed is small, and thus the purpose of grading is fulfilled. Having all that said, here's 3 grading strategies ordered by their accuracy in my opinion. First, outdoor references. So you want to put a reasonable grade for your first ascended problem forward, whether that's indoors or outdoors. You gotta bring decent outdoor experience to the table around that grade from different outdoor areas to have something to compare that problem to. The reason why I distinguish between outdoor and indoor references is that outdoor problems cannot be reset. Yeah, maybe sometimes a hold breaks, but in general outdoor problems are stable and thus repeated in the same state by a lot of people, therefore it can be assumed that their grade is already somewhat accurate and established, which is especially true when you look at the classics of an area, for example. If you only compare with indoor references, you can quickly run into the problem of grade inflation. For example, when whole gyms decide to grade a bit more, let's say, customer friendly to please their audience. This is the main reason why we often have outdoor problems seeming harder graded than problems in local gyms, even when they are around the corner. Same goes for only comparing to outdoor references of the same area. Some outdoor areas want to attract more climbing tourism by grading a bit nicer. That's why you gotta have references ideally around the world, ideally from modern and old school areas, otherwise your grading will be shifted towards too soft or too hard. I put outdoor references on the first spot because I think for me it's the gold standard of grading, but it's also the one hardest to master. Again, it takes a lot of heart to get mileage in different areas, different styles, etc. When I grade problems on my home wall, I try to use outdoor boulders I did in the past as a reference to compare them to. Would I not have that experience, my next best strategy would be indoor references. Number 2. So you're working at a climbing gym and you'd like to grade that new problem you first ascended and maybe even set yourself. Well, obviously it would make sense to take a look around and compare it with other problems you climbed in that same gym, or other gyms for that matter, to achieve a reasonable grade. Again, it might well be that those gyms already grade inflated or deflated into oblivion, which makes overall accurate grading hardly possible, but at least your grade will be adequate for the area, which is the gym in this case. Same goes for the outdoors. When you only have outdoor references of one area and you established something new in that same area, but have no other comparison to a different area. Quite often, gyms have some really established reference problems, like, okay, we know this is 6C, this is 7A, this is 7B, repeated and confirmed by a lot of gym rats, so you won't be too wrong using these as a reference. Other gyms avoid the grading discussion altogether by using their own independent scales and difficulties, which I think is cheaping out a bit of the discussion, because let's be real, at some point people always want to compare against the more widespread standard scales. I have one boulder on my home wall, number 12, which I think checks in just perfectly at 8A/V11 for me, so I repeat that every once in a while to compare its difficulty with other stuff I climbed during the same session. This helps a lot with grading, although I need to be careful with that as well. If I repeat this problem often enough, increased muscle memory will make it seem easier than it really is, and I might end up at some point saying, maybe it's only 7C+. So let's say you build a home wall from scratch and you've got neither outdoor nor direct indoor references, but you did some climbs already, somewhere in the spirit realm between in and outdoors maybe. Thus you know your limit is 7A and you needed 10 tries for that. Projecting time is the third and often quite inaccurate strategy for grading a climb I want to share here. Of course, when you know you need 10 tries over 3 sessions, for example, for 7A, and now you needed 13 tries over 4 sessions for this new project, it sounds reasonable to grade it 7A+. It could as well be, though, that it's in fact 7B and you made a little bit of a fitness jump. It could as well be that it's only 6C+ and you just got stuck in the wrong beta and pushed that through till the end. Or the climb just hit your weaknesses. Or the climb contains a low percentage move and you were a bit unlucky during your attempts. As you can see, without any references, indoors or better outdoors, we're always a bit tapping in the dark with mere projecting time. In any case, it is always best practice to get more people to try your projects. People with different body types, different limits, and ideally more experience in the sport. After all, the more people red point they climb, the more accurate the mean of their grading suggestions will become. On my home wall I have a couple of almost symmetrical problems, but none of them got a symmetrical grade. That sparked interest, because objectively speaking, 2 symmetric versions of the same problem should get the same grade, right? Well, as I said, firstly, they are not perfectly symmetrical, and secondly, even if they were, at the moment it makes more sense for my training and digital guidebook, so to speak, if I grade the wall just the way it feels for me. And since I am, like most climbers, a victim of one-sidedness, my left hand is quite a bit weaker than my right hand, one version of the symmetry problems always feels harder than the other, i.e. takes more attempts than the other, and thus gets the higher grade. So here we can see the inaccuracy of going after projecting time in full action, which would probably level out quite quickly if it was an outdoor climb and more people came to redpoint it. But let's round this up with an interesting thought experiment. What if most climbers actually were one-sided in such way that their left hand is weaker, and you would let them try a perfectly symmetrical problem without knowing it? No symmetrical grade would establish itself even after a long time, since one version would always feel harder to more people than the other. Now the question is, what's the more accurate grade? The one given by the people or the symmetrical grade? The grade given by the people, of course, because only this grade will fulfill expectations of physical challenges of this climb the most in upcoming unprejudiced climbers, fulfilling the purpose of grading in the first place the most. After all, it's an interesting discussion, but don't think too much about it. Sometimes it's just great to climb and pretend to not even know about grades. Try it out. Anyway, I hope you've got something from the episode. Definitely let me know your opinion and experience down below, and drop a like if you're there already. That's always very much appreciated. Thanks. Stay strong, and I'll see you soon in the next one. Bye.